Let's talk about how to survive and thrive during these unprecedented times, and emotional intelligence in leadership, so much more critical than ever to build trust, personal resilience, and to be future focused. Linda Tregoworth runs leadership coaching and joins us now. Linda, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Such a difficult time for a lot of leaders who are trying to deal with their own rising emotions and fears during a situation like this, as well as trying to run a business, as well as trying to make the right decisions, as well as trying to keep their employees looking to them for leadership at a time when they don't know who to follow.
So true. And 69% of leaders actually really struggle with communicating with their people. And the reason for that is fear. They're afraid of being inauthentic. They're afraid of speaking up and not being certain of what they're actually delivering, and it really holds them back from actually connecting with their people.
What's the best way for a leader to communicate? I run a team here at Ticker, and I go to fire off an email to everybody, and you think, gosh, this language just seems a little bit too official. This isn't who I actually am. But to get it clear and concise out to people, you kind of have to be that way. So what do you find to be the best way? Is it emails? Is it text messages these days? Is it getting everyone together, even though that can be quite difficult at a time like this? What's your view?
I think there's different ways to do it, but before you need to figure out what you need to do, you actually need to know who you are.
Right, so talk to us about that.
So if you look at people like Jacinda Ardern, right, PM of New Zealand, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but you can detect an accent.
I did detect an accent. How did you get through?
Yeah, exactly. 16 years ago. So I think she's really demonstrated the fact that she knows herself.
Yeah.
She's able to be true to who she is.
Vulnerability.
Absolutely. Like, if you're prepared to step out in a sweatshirt to deliver a very important piece of information that's going to affect your population, your people.
Yes.
You can only do that through true empathy, knowing yourself.
So you're a Kiwi, I'm an Aussie. I love your country very much. You're obviously here for a reason, because you must like ours too. The one thing I often say about New Zealand is the emotional intelligence seems to be a little bit higher than what I generally witness in the Australian population, in the sense that a lot of people here are, let's take action, as opposed to let's think about taking the action. Whereas New Zealand, Kiwis I find to be really good when it comes to emotional intelligence. Even the blokes in Kiwi seem to be more in touch with who they are.
Oh, they're still pretty good at putting up the walls, putting things in boxes, don't get me wrong, but I think the thing is we've got a very practical approach to how we just handle things. Like, it's just, you just go with the flow, more or less.
And is it not worrying about, like, when Jacinda Ardern decides to wear a veil, for example, following the deaths of all those people in that tragedy early last year in Christchurch at the mosque, when she goes out in a sweatshirt, as you say, to address the nation about coronavirus restrictions and the lockdown, when she comes under fire from male conservative radio hosts in New Zealand just the other week, obviously Alan Jones in our country as well, and the way she responds seems to be a lack of fear about how people will react.
You've just got to be centred. You've just got to, for me, it's always just about really, who am I? And if you are faking it till you make it, that's not a good way to be on the planet. And everyone smells that. People smell fear.
A lot of business leaders of the old gen they play golf. They join clubs. It is a club. It's still a club for a lot of people. Yeah. But we know that business is changing. We know that millennials just don't tolerate that sort of thing. And there's become this real divide, hasn't there, between younger workers and senior management who act that way. Who's winning at the moment, do you think?
I think the battle is always going to be won by those who are completely honest. So, if you've got a leader who's most of my clients, they're fronting up to people and they're giving some scary messages around the certainty or lack of it right now. And, that's really confronting. It's confronting for us to admit that to ourselves. But truth is always the thing that is going to win.
And you are right in the sense that for a lot of business owners, they're having to deliver some terrible news. Yeah. Yesterday, we saw the really tragic news from News Corp about all of those local newspapers in regions around Australia that are closing down. The print editions, they're moving online, 14 of them closing down completely. And in that, I guess leadership have to explain to people why the decision's being made, both in terms of to the customers, to the businesses, and of course to the people who are being impacted.
I think it's always a battle. You're gonna, in the rounds and rounds and rounds of redundancies that I've been through myself, been here in Australia and New Zealand and the UK, I think it's a difficult message to give to people when they're actually afraid of how they're going to earn money down the track, or they're afraid of having to go through that. Often the leaders delivering the messages are the ones that are actually going to be impacted too, but no one thinks about them. It's lonely at the top.
It is very lonely at the top, and it's very, very hard for a manager to know which direction to go at the moment to retain as many staff. But what we're seeing is COVID-19's also become, I'm not going to use an excuse, it might just be the tipping point for a lot of businesses who have been trying and hoping for better days. We know the economy had been in a lot of trouble last year. We've been talking about quantitative easing last year as well. And then there were the bushfires, and then this happened. And it's been a difficult time for a lot of businesses. Do you think that when I saw the announcement from News Corp yesterday, and not to be critical, but the fact that the announcement was done all at once and it was kind of this official memo to staff that everyone's going to be impacted and this is how it is that the way to do it, or is the trickle effect the way to do it? Being concerned about leaks and therefore keeping everything super secret, that doesn't seem to have a huge amount of empathy, obviously, as it comes. But sometimes you just got to rip the Band-Aid off.
I think it's that battle between what's inevitable, and people are going to make up their own stories if they don't have the information. Yeah. And I've worked in organisations which are very long-serving employees, and those guys talk. It's important to actually get the message out there, rip the Band-Aid off, as you say. And
so Jacinda Ardern is one leader that you point to. Any others that you can point to who do a good job in the business world, for example, who you look at who have emotional intelligence?
I think for me, one of the best experiences I ever had was David Thodey.
Okay, from Telstra.
Yeah, very, very compassionate man.
This followed the era of Sol Trujillo, of course.
And I saw both worlds.
Yeah.
I was part of that world when I was an employee. And I know what good feels like, and that felt good. He actually shifted up the gear in terms of looking after employees and the well-being of those employees, as well as customers. So customer experience, hopefully.
How do we find out about you, Linda?
My website. So head over to my website, lindatregowath.com. So Linda, L-Y-N-D-A,
yes.
Tregowath, T-R-E-G-O-W-E-T-H.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right. Now.